has had a profound journey of his awakening, where he went from being a professional classical musician and now he's transformed his life and through a number of esoteric and metaphysical experiences where he actually began to spontaneously actually project, and basically that altered the course of his life, his career, his interests, and obviously his consciousness. And now he basically is teaching people astral projection in workshops. He has online courses. He's written a book about this. He's also a healer, and he offers one-on-one Reiki sessions and also teaches Reiki people. But today he's going to be sharing his experience of the astral dimension, which is really profound, because a lot of the themes that we embody in paradigm shift is basically becoming more highly evolved, and this is exactly what the consciousness in the actual world is, because it's taking what's unconscious from the perspective that we dream every night, and we are actually projecting, all of us are doing this every night, and actually making it conscious, which is a huge leap forward in consciousness. And this is what Greg's going to share, his experience of awakening and his experience of the actual world. So please make welcome Greg Doyle.
Thanks, Anthony. Yes, lovely to speak, and thank you. Is standing here good, or it's okay anywhere? Well, I tell you, I'll start at the beginning. As Anthony said, I was a classical musician. At the time, this was 1999, I was living in Vienna, in Austria. And little was I to know that when I went to sleep, it was on the 12th of March 1999, was I to wake up in a very different reality. Basically, what happened was this: just before dawn, and essentially the astral experience, this is my experience of the astral phenomenon, always happens before dawn. And on this particular morning, so it was the next morning, it was the 13th of March, and all of a sudden a white light came into my forehead and started to just sit there, this concentrated white light, and it kind of got very loud. I could hear wind in my ears. I knew something was up. Essentially, this is what happened. It was a feeling of a question. It wasn't a verbal feeling, but the light came into my heart. It made me feel really good, so I wasn't afraid. A lot of people have asked me, oh, was it scary? Not at all. So this light was there pulsating. It seemed to take these triangles of light from behind my eyelids, focusing it into this ball of pulsating light that was going really full on. But it also came to my heart and made me feel very, very ecstatic. And it was a feeling of, do you want to come with me? And I thought, hell yeah, let's go. Next thing I knew, I was whizzing down this tunnel. It was only probably a week later that I called it a wormhole, because I was walking past a video store in Vienna and I saw this, the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. And I just thought, this looks interesting. Not really into sci-fi. And the wormhole sequence, if you've ever seen Contact, was exactly the kind of thing I had. It actually brought me to tears watching it in the video. So I'm moving down this tunnel of light, and it's kind of segmented, it's going very fast, I have no body, I'm just whooshing, there's wind in my ears, and a lot of astral experiences seems to be accompanied with some kind of wind in the ears. And I'm going left and right, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a trip, you know. I just had never thought or heard of any experience like this before. Next thing I know, I'm thinking, well, can I leave this? When does this end? And then I'm out in the atmosphere of what you would call a non-earthly environment. And there are these tall structures, very tall towers, disc-shaped at the top, windows, like hundreds of windows. It's like a desert state, but I'm kind of hovering there at about 100 meters high, looking at all these buildings. The main thing that grabbed me, and this is what probably kept me in good stead in going out in the astral, was not to get caught up in what I was being shown. I was interested in how I was feeling. I just thought, well, this is bizarre. I feel this is hyper real. I can sense everything in sort of hyper reality. Like I can my eyes can kind of go out and be right above the structures. I can go behind the structures without having to move. The colours were immense. And I had this singular mind. One trait of the astral is you have a singular mind. And I'll get into that a bit more later on. But it's this mind that is very focused. And that leads to kind of instant manifestations in this reality and things like this. And when I come back into 3D, I'd realise I would sense the mind being fractured into the fractured human state. So I was looking at these very modern structures, and I had very much this feeling of, this is not Earth, there are others. And this wasn't a question I had kind of entertained, like, are there others? I hadn't really thought of that stuff. I wasn't a sci-fi person. But it was so, so real. Not long after, I was thinking, well, this is pretty weird. I knew it was something profound, and I remember the next night, it was a very ecstatic experience. As I said, it came to my heart. A lot of the astral experiences, you have this real sense of connection to something far, far greater. You can't really put into words, but or try to put into words over the time. But I had this feeling. It was very addictive. It was a feeling of like, wow, this is this connection with something greater, and I'll get more into it. But I kind of wanted answers, because the very next night when I lay down, the light came back again into my forehead. I hadn't heard a third eye and these sort of things. I had meditated since my 20s. As a classical musician, just for physical relaxation, mental relaxation. I found it profound that not everyone was doing it, because I used to conduct and play the violin. I'd be tense before performing, and then I'd lie down for 10 minutes, do some meditation, and I'd play 100% better. And I thought, all my colleagues were saying, you're cracked, you know. But I was obsessed in meditation. Just the physical and mental relaxation for me was, the thing. But I'd never heard of anything like the third eye or what was going on. So the very next night after that first situation, the light was back before I'd even fallen asleep. I'd open my eyes, the light would go. I'd close my eyes, it would come back going shh. That freaked me out. And I thought, this is weird. And I kind of wanted some answers. I was too afraid to sleep then. So a few nights later, I thought, listen, this is very cryptic. What's going on? I want some answers. I was taken out of my body, so what would happen is lights or vibrations would come. This particular experience were like vibrations. Take me out of body, and I found myself sitting in kind of like this medieval inn. There was a guy opposite and a woman to my right, just looking at me, smiling. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? They started to tell me about myself. A little bit too much information. And then I thought, okay, I'm out of here. And once again, it was hyper-realistic. I then exited, and then I woke up again. As soon as I closed my eyes, I was pulled back. And the reason it's often called astral travel is you have this sensation of movement. There is a feeling of some kind of movement. The whole thing may very well be an internal experience, but you have this feeling of movement. That's why it's called astral travel or projection. So I'm back in this inn again. And they're telling me about myself, and I asked a few questions. I said, well, where am I? And one of them said, Gwyneth. And I was making jokes, like I was a funny guy back then. I'm still a funny guy, but I was like a very funny guy. And I said, as in Gwyneth Paltrow, and they said, not quite. And I found out later, I Googled, spelled EDD at the end, Gwyneth. It was a Welsh medieval place of significance, a spiritual significance. So it was spelled EDD at the end in Welsh, but pronounced Gwyneth. And they were telling me about these 7 worlds, and I'm going, whoa, and I'm out of here. And I just keep on waking up. Every time I'd wake up and close my eyes, I'd get pulled back to them. I had no choice. But I did ask for some kind of answers after that first experience. Then I was in this beautiful field, and the female guide, who was aged in Earth years alongside me, she's popped up a few times. She was seeing this beautiful field, and it was like, once again, because it was in the astral, I've got this perfect recollection of it, like the grass and the sunset, and it was, the colours were hyper real, and she had all these colours around her, and she was telling me about auras, and she had these balls of light within her, and I'm going, what's going on here, And she was telling me about her energetic system, and I'm thinking, well, this is irrelevant. It was beautiful, but I was thinking, well, I've been hijacked here. Even though it was good, I wanted to make some sense of it and also stamp my authority on the situation. So I started to insult her, make derogatory comments about this woman, and she just looked at me and sort of chuckled. And this was pivotal. She said, Greg, we've been watching you for some time. Why are you so sad? And I remember I came to from that, and it was like an arrow had been shone into my heart, and I sort of felt my whole system going blah, 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 blah. I thought, well, this is really weird. Like, these people are calling me by name, they're telling me about my dramas, my traumas, ask me why I'm so sad. And then, I'll come back to that one, I started to think about who am I. Now, this was after a surfing injury in Victoria, but it represents, I was about to go to Europe the next day, so my wife wasn't too impressed that I was in that particular, about to travel. But I started to think, after she said, why was I so sad? I started to look at kind of this notion of identifying with trauma, and I felt different eyes looking back at me, and this comes into the experiences later on. I started to sense that maybe I wasn't this persona, Greg Doyle, who this happened to, that happened to, you know, shy little kid, you know, a lot of abuse as a kid and growing up and then doing music. I started to think that, you know, the disappointments in my life and all this kind of stuff had kind of identified my pain body, if you like, and I had a feeling that wasn't me. And so this question, who am I, actually was offered to me in the astral by my own voice. So I could loosely say that was probably from my higher self, some aspect of myself that is more realized than I am, because so I'd start to feel the vibrations, I'd be taken into a void, this dark space, not negative, just a space of nothingness. And then I would hear, this was the first time I heard my own voice, and he said, who am I? Next thing, I see myself exactly as I was at that stage. And then the wind starts up again. I'm going, okay, here we go. And then there's a slideshow of myself. I'm getting younger and younger and younger until I'm a baby, then I disappear. Then there's this old Mongolian guy right in front of me. And the same process, wind in the ears, he's getting younger and younger. The eyes are always staying in the same place. He disappears. Then there's this guy, maybe in his 30s, like an African kind of medicine man. He's got all this, he's got a lot of sort of dressed in this regalia. And I kind of sort of think, whoa, this is weird, because it's really high definition right in front of you, like you are in front of yourself. He gets younger, disappears, baby gone. Then there's the background. See, each of these particular beings had a background. Next one, I'm thinking this is an Earth, and there's this really weird looking alien in front of me, and his eyes, and he's getting younger and younger as well. And I'm freaking out. I think, okay, I'm out of here. And as I pull out, and you can always pull out of an astral experience. Sometimes it's a bit tricky, but it can be tricky, you know, getting out of a car sometimes when the front door doesn't work, which I did have a car with it. So, I mean, a lot of people talk about the situation, it's so scary, oh, being in the astral. Not really. As I'm pulling out of that experience, I hear a voice say, intermission. And it's kind of like this kind of humor. Perhaps that was echoing the kind of person I was or am, whatever. But I found it to be a very loving kind of guidance, this whole astral experience, even when showing me things that were absolutely deplorable. This ability to stand back from it and just observe became, I think, critical in the experience. So I kind of thought, well, that's weird. What was that? Once again, a few days later, I meet someone who I kind of trust. I wasn't telling anyone about these experiences because I thought they'd think I was wacko. I thought I was wacko at this stage. I was keeping pretty quiet. But I felt that it was once again, very real. The visions, the colours, to me, that was the thing. So I speak to a friend of mine, and she said to me, who's I thought might know about this, and she said, that sounds like a past life regression. And once again, as she said it, it reminded me of when the guide said, why are you so sad? My whole body started to shudder again. And in that moment, I knew it to be so. I knew that that was an aspect of myself. I was shown that. It wasn't that I had to think, oh, I'll Google that. Oh, maybe that's right. I knew it to be so. And it didn't matter if anybody believed me. That was irrelevant. I knew that I was much more than the sum of my experiences and trauma in this life. I'll go back to, now this little guy was really interesting. I think a lot of people have said, how did it happen? Why did you start going astral? Why did you start going astral? Okay, now as I said, I've done meditation, but then not long before my first astral experience, I had a sore shoulder. And I'd been to a few people to try to get it fixed, and it was kind of a weird kind of shoulder. I thought it was a deep pain. It came out of kind of nowhere. And I went to this woman who was a craniosacral person in Vienna, but I didn't know she was also an energy healer. So the first thing, she's doing some weird things around my shoulder, and she just said, yeah, you were blocked, had a blocked shoulder, you know. And I'm going, what? She was a bit flippant. And my nature was kind of like, well, that's rubbish, you can't just say that. So I said, do I have any more blocks? And she said, yeah, sure, you're human. And so I go back to her, and then I remember it was the fourth session, and things happened. I felt my energy body, I started to really feel things. This was before my first astral experience. And then she plunged her fingers into my mouth against my gums. And I thought to myself, have you washed your hands? The answer was no, but that's okay, because she was kind of in a trance, I noticed, and she said, Greg, you haven't been able to process aggression correctly. Okay. And I was the kind of person to perhaps shy away from confrontations, probably having been abused until I could defend myself physically. And then I woke up the next day. That night, my gums were burning, like I could feel this stretching, like my teeth, everything was like going inside. I wake up the next morning, and there is a wolf, a holographic wolf, growling at me, black wolf with green eyes, growling at me. So I could see you through this wolf. And that followed me around for 2 days and 2 nights. I couldn't go to work, I was a mess, I was crying. It was like, what's going on here? Like, I've gone mad. And this is before my first astral experience. Now, after a couple of days, I had a flatmate, we had a good argument. We needed to have this argument about some power bill, whatever. And I found that I was able to keep my ground. I sort of didn't run away energetically from the argument. I was able to say what I wanted without sort of, being cut down or cutting myself down. As soon as the argument was completed, the wolf licked me on the face and went into the corner. A week later again, there's a woman at work. She comes in, and this wolf is on a t-shirt. Exactly the wolf, not that wolf, I mean that's approximately, but exactly the wolf I saw was on this woman's t-shirt. I've Googled it since a few times, never found it. And my whole body went, and I said, well, what do you do? She said, I do Reiki. What's Reiki? And I became a Reiki master not long after and got into energy healing. It was really weird, because this woman who I'd go back to and who was doing this stuff with me, she said, oh, one day you're going to be here to do this stuff. And I was just saying, this is absolute rubbish. I'm a musician, what are you talking about? But I kept going back. It was weird. It was weird stuff. I kind of knew, I was kind of like I was being pulled to the surface of something, But this wolf was amazing, and that triggered, I believe, not long after that wolf episode, the first astral experience started. So that's why I got into energy healing myself, because I think releasing trauma in the physical body, energy bodies can often lead to astral experiences. We'll get more into that notion of the energy body and stuff. This was a great experience. So I've had a lot of weird experiences, and a lot of them relating to some kind of ET presence. This one was interesting. I heard the last speaker talking about the bridge, and this started in a dream. I was in a dream state. Then I crossed a bridge. As I crossed the bridge, I became lucid in this dream. So it was a dream. It was like the difference between a lucid dream and an astral experience. There is a difference. As I crossed the bridge, there's this kind of guy on the other side of the bridge who's in sort of androgynous, in a kind of a silver bodysuit, quite small, alien looking. And I went up in the dream, and I seemed to know them. I gave him a big hug, and they were kind of sort of pushing me back. And he or she said to me, Greg, I've got to show you something. The next thing, I feel the movement again. I'm out of my body. So often you can springboard from a lucid dream. What I'll do, and lucid dreams are often, because the stuff I teach with astral travel, the courses I do and stuff, they will often lead to lucid experiences. Generally, one hint, if you're in a lucid dream, look for something that is particularly lucid, like an animal or a rock or a painting that is very clear. You focus on that, or a person maybe looking at you in the dream, a bit weird, and you focus on that and you get pulled through into an astral dimension. So you go from the lucid dream state, which is not quite as like a dream state isn't quite as structured as what we're in now, but a lucid state compared to the astral, there's a big difference. The astral state makes this look like a dream state, which is fascinating, which was to play havoc with my mind and my sanity in the beginning. It was very interesting. This experience, I'm over the bridge, let me show you something, then all of a sudden there's these lasers, so I'm looking through my brain, I can see my brain, and all these lasers are, and it's like dentist drills going bzzz, bzzz, and all these lasers coming to my brain, and it's pretty full on and very loud, and I'm thinking, don't like this. About to pull out. Then it stops. Then there's all of these very modern kind of looking instruments, some kind of technology, and it's shown to me on a conveyor belt, like an invisible conveyor belt. And then all of a sudden I see a screen being fitted in the right hand side of my vision, and all of these little hieroglyphs going that didn't look particularly earthly. And I could also feel behind my right ear some kind of like little coins dropping. Very pleasant experience. It's kind of downloading actual technology and the feelings of a screen being fitted. For a long time after that, I did feel that I was some kind of probe. I'd often pop up in the astral. I remember once popping up, looking at these mountains. I knew I was in Canada. I soon Googled the pictures because I remembered everything, and it was in Vancouver. And I just had a perfect view, or I'd just pop up in some place. It was so bizarre, and I had the feeling, I remember telling my wife, I have the feeling someone's looking through me. Eventually, yeah, well, we'll get more to that, but eventually I was able to get some control of that situation. So the Om was amazing. Okay, I was in this wasn't long after it began, and I was in Munich in a hotel, and I was cottoning onto the idea that I was astral traveling, whatever you want to call it. And I'd heard that you could have some control over the situation. While I did enjoy it, it was a bit off-putting. You never knew when I was going to get taken out of my body, right? So I was imagining sort of going out of my body, drifting above my body. That's what I heard you could do. So I was doing a bit of that. Nothing really happened. Then in the middle of the night, I went to the loo, and I was halfway there in the hotel, turned around, and I saw my body in bed. And that was cool, but it was also revolting. And one thing, when you see yourself, no, it's really interesting. When you perceive yourself from the astral eye, you can't relate to this sense of lesser than, or this sense you see in the posture, all of these false limitations, these defeated, like everything is highlighted in the posture of the face or the body, and because you know that you're not lesser than anything. You know that there is this divine aspect of you in the astral. When you look into the astral mind, there's a sense of perfection. There's a sense that nothing is lost. And so you don't want anything to do with that. When I saw my physical body, I felt literally sick to my astral gut. And so then I found then there's people walking through the room kind of naked like zombies. And I asked one woman, this is in the hotel room, I said, you know, who are you? I'm from England. She just kept walking. Now this was interesting because the next morning I was able to, and this often happens with astral explorers, the next morning I was able to identify, because I was walking through the rooms in the hotel and watching people's astral bodies, some people walking around like zombies, and some people's astral body were just out of the physical body. And I went around identifying people. That was the first thing I did. So in the morning, you know, in these European places you often have breakfast all together, I was able to identify people, and I was able to say, you're from England. I didn't actually say that, but I thought then, okay, after I identified a few people, I thought, okay, I want to visit my girlfriend Moni. She was back in Vienna at the time, and I thought I'm going to go and visit her. So all of a sudden I'm in this void, and that was the first time I'd gone in the void, and I heard this tremendous Om. It was a low-pitched, sort of basso profundo, AUM Om sound, and it was incredible. I remember it reverberating through my body, thinking, well, this is really freaky. I kind of want to wake up because this is so big, but I just thought, it's also good. So I let that reverberate through me for a while. I thought I must Google that word later on. It does exist, which is fascinating to get this first-hand experience of stuff. I think that's why personally I kind of stay removed from kind of researching this information, because it's just happened. And I remember when the first people came to the astral workshops I put on, I'd look at them and think, why would you go to an astral workshop? Now I'm used to it, but I remember in the beginning thinking, that's pretty wacko. I would never have thought of going to an astral workshop. And I thought that's strange because I'm taking the astral workshop and I'm telling them they're slightly wacko. But after a while I just realised, well, a lot of people have heard about this and looked into it. So I'm zooming along after the Om. I'm stopped over the top of this enormous building. I've no idea why, total detail. I go to my apartment in Vienna. Moni's there. I say, hi Moni. She says, hi, wakes up and then closes her eyes again like she's drunk. I say, do you want to come flying? Do you want to come flying? And she says, yeah, sure. But then I'm kind of trying to get her, but there's resistance and she keeps falling back into her body. I've even tried with some people to forcibly yank them out of their body. I tried all sorts of stuff. I would boo people. They'd be walking in the street. I would stand in the street and I would allow people to walk through me, and you can embody them and you can feel their emotional state entirely, their story entirely. And you can also influence people. And it's interesting because that also leads to how we are being influenced from other realms as well. So I was playing all sorts of silly buggers out because I didn't know I didn't know what's good, bad, well, what? If you're pulling me out, that's the trade-off. I'm going to do this kind of stuff as well. So she didn't come out of body with me, but what I found later on was this building once again that was shown to me that I stopped over. I saw in the paper not long later, it was called the Millennium Tower, just built in Vienna, and that was exactly the view they'd taken as they'd launched the building, you know, in the media campaign. So I didn't know that building, that wasn't on my, you know, I was stopped over it. So I started to realize that this was a guided experience. Often early on, the situations are verified, the experiences are verified to you. So you realize, okay, there is something real going on. One interesting thing though, when I did, once I was out of body and I flew down near a church, this guy came out of a church, kind of looking all pious, good on him. And as I'm flying down, I said in the astral, Jesus loves you. I don't know why, I just said that. And I'm flying, and the guy got a shock. I just thought, so what, if you go a boo or you go, ah, to someone, right? They'll get it like that, or if you embody them in the street, they'll kind of stop and go, oh. So you can actually pass a thought over. Now, as I did that, the Jesus loves you thing, there was a guy in a sort of smart-looking attire behind, kind of blonde, kind of a good-looking guy, and said, Greg, in the nicest sense, don't do that again. And I didn't feel it was a slap. I just thought, okay. It was a form of kind of guardian in the astral. So I say to people, I say to you, if you have a situation where you feel you are pulled out of body, go for it. Because I know I do pull some people out of body, and I know some people after courses they say, oh Greg, you came, thanks for taking me out of body. I don't remember doing that. Other people I remember taking out, but not them. But so if you have permission to do so, you can. Now it's an interesting thing, having permission to do so. So often when people see a shadow entity, often it's them standing by them. Or I've seen lots of monsters and stuff. I'll just in the beginning I was just swearing at them. Or I'd say, I'd put my hand up in a cross, whatever. And then anyway, we'll get more to that. But it is absolutely fascinating, the protocols that are out there, and basically learning through doing. What I found was, I'm flying along once, and I thought, hang on, what's going on here? I felt something around my ankles. I turned around, and I noticed there was this he was like, that's not a perfect representation, it was like a faceted person, like a diamond faceted being holding my ankles as I'm flying. And I thought, whoa, that's bizarre, because I was feeling this notion of, I just felt I wasn't alone. And then he said, it kind of cackled through, it was like through an electronic resonator of some kind. It was an alien language, but I understood the meaning of it. So much of what goes on out there is telepathic. You never talk verbally to anyone in the astral. And the guy said, I translated, he said, you don't need to know this. I thought, okay. But the fact that I turned around and saw that means I do need to know it, but don't obsess. So of course you do obsess. When someone says don't obsess, you're going to obsess. But for me it was comforting to know that it is a guided experience. And this was, so he was kind of my multifaceted, interdimensional kind of being who carries me through the astral. It's pretty cool. Buddha in the belly was fascinating. I started to change. This is where we get into the notion of things changing. I think after that Who Am I episode, and realizing that, because I'd sometimes, like I'd visit beautiful fjords, and there's beautiful like flower, looked like a Hindu temple, this gold, and like these incredible experiences. I even had an experience where like I'm coming out of the void, and then there's this beautiful lake and enormous pine trees, pine forests, and I'm hearing these drums going boom, 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 boom. What's going on? Then I see these people on the other side of the lake, all of a sudden it's frozen, these are American Indians moving very quickly along this frozen lake. I'm standing there naked. There are other people standing there naked. I'm thinking, what's going on? As soon as I see them, they're really smiling. And then we're on the lake with them, we're all dancing, and it's like an initiation, and I have no interest in that particular culture. Not an active interest. So much of these initiations and learnings were kind of going on just randomly. It was just so beautiful. And when you're in this hyper reality, of course, when I come home from work, I didn't want to. This is boring, Let's just go out there. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just go. So what happened was this lack of reactivity started becoming stronger and stronger. And I actually literally felt. I looked into him. The laughing Buddha is also called the Buddhai. And he represents lack of possessions. And often we possess our identity, we possess our trauma like a badge, We walk around going, oh, it's terrible. This happens, terrible. Terrible. And we kind of feel we've got to represent some kind of stance, Otherwise, what would we be? We'd be nothing. So it kind of got to a point where I remember a few years ago, in a social situation, people would, not even knowing that I'd gotten into Reiki and I was doing astral stuff, and I remember I was overseas, and this woman in a social situation on a beach in Spain just said, started telling me about her suicide attempts, incredibly horrific suicide attempts, totally out of context. And I felt this guy start up, and I start to feel my stomach starting to move, and I go, no, this is inappropriate. And he'd start to laugh, and I start to have this full belly laugh, and she looked at me, just her eyes going, what? People in the circle kind of going, oh no. And I just lost it. She lost it. Everyone lost it. That was it. And, so that the whole, whenever something of incredible gravitas was approaching me, I'd just feel him laughing. And it was so bizarre, but so real. Another beautiful situation was I went out once, and to go out, like, you go above the house astrally, there are a lot of ships around. The sky's full of extraterrestrial ships in the astral, full, everywhere. And beautiful to see this life teeming. We'll get further into that, but to see it in the cosmos, and I blast out. I remember once I was pulled toward the asteroid belt. There was this a few triangular craft on this side of the asteroid belt, sitting behind asteroids, and I thought, this is interesting. Why am I being shown this again? The whole ET thing, which I'm not really interested in. I had a feeling they were actually defending us from any outside threat. Then I saw this massive craft go by. It was kind of white, looked like almost a whale. It had this stenciled writing, almost like a military writing. And I just thought, wow. And I thought, that's bizarre. It was the feeling of Galactic Federation. And I Googled later on, of course, but I wasn't into that. I'm not into that kind of school of thought. As I came back to my body, because often you do get a bit of a shock out there, a question came telepathically from me to that craft, and it was, why are you not known to the collective consciousness? And as I went back to my body, I heard a voice say, it was a male voice, and it said, because you continue to kill your own. And it was like that feeling of, okay, there is some kind of threshold of consciousness that one needs to cross. These guys were interesting. I did choose to go out. I would feel these vibrations in my energy field. It sounded like a screeching jet, if you've ever heard screeching jets. So what I learned to do was, when I'd fall asleep, because the vibrations were coming, I became kind of hypervigilant, and I'd fall asleep listening for vibrations. And so before dawn, the vibrations would wake my body, so my body would be, wake my mind. My body would be sleeping, and my mind would be awake. And before I get onto the tall white, one interesting thing I noticed, I lay there, And I would put as I said, I was really into meditation. I really relaxed my body so much, and my body was totally asleep. And it took about 1.5 hours for the body to drop out. So I relaxed my body to the extent that all I could feel was this state. And then my body dropped out, and then my third eye, I felt like a screen open up, and my female guide said, "Hi, Greg," and waved. And so it's literally like a screen that opens up on the third eye if you're patient enough. So you focus your eyeballs slightly up, relax your body profusely, and just lie there awake as long as possible. Eventually your body just says, "I give up." So to develop that awareness, the distinction between body consciousness and the other is interesting, that other aspect of consciousness. These guys are interesting. I'd be pulled out to these ships, massive ships, as big as cities. All these humans were going out, kind of flying out. The ships were kind of like, I had to really struggle to stay above. It was like treading water to keep my consciousness above. They'd be kind of like that sort of plate metal, you know, and there were these tall white guys, over 7 feet tall, all white hair, white skin. And one time I was sort of roving around the ship. A lot of people were sort of like that. I was sort of trying to engage people, and would engage them for a little while. And then I went off. I found a little door, went out, and it was kind of like a piece of ground. I thought, this is a bit strange. One of the tall whites came out and said, it was interesting. You can leave whenever you want. You can even kill yourself, but we will always have access to your energy, and that is all we need. Interesting. On these ships, the last time I was there, around these huge tables, it was like mess tables. We were eating. The cutlery was very good. The food wasn't bad, and I was trying to engage with some people. In the next room, I could hear a cow being slaughtered, and I was moved to stand up, smash my cutlery on the table, and I said to everyone in the room, "Where next?" I was just moved to say it. And that was the last time I was invited back upon that ship. Now, what I felt was, what I learned was that there are certain beings that are kind of usurping our energy, our sort of this complicit unconsciousness that humans often have, in kind of allowing things just to be, or not really, you know, is being usurped in some way, and it has something to do with the karmic thing, which we'll get back into. So these people were just recycling, these beings were just recycling our energy fields, and probably part of that dark agenda to do with reincarnation. So, I mean, reincarnation, the whole karmic program is dead in the water once you see it. It's dead in the water. We think that we are bound to it, action-reaction, but we're not. And this is something they rely on. They very much trigger our emotional bodies to get a reaction. For instance, the mainstream is always triggering. First port of call is death. Let's report the death. So this one thing you do lose. Oh, that's one thing I must mention. My higher self also, in one astral experience, I'm in the void, and it said, I want to see my own death. So I'm lying there in this room, drowning in my own blood. And I had to go through with it in this physical body. So I literally experienced death. So one great thing, a lot of astral explorers say this, is you lose the fear of death or annihilation, because this phenomenal connection that you have out there, it's beautiful. There is this incredible, all-pervading sense of benevolence, of love. Not this gushing love, that's why I said the word benevolence. It's this feeling of, it's a non-emotional state. And it's very beautiful, it's very divine, and it's all through us, and it's very heart-based. We even say the astral body is basically, the heart chakra is kind of the one that drives the astral experience, which is true. Often the heart goes quite crazy during it. So these guys, while they are part of that, what we call dark agenda, there's so many more beautiful beings. I used to go up these astral elevators at the end of my bed and talk to these guys every night who weren't here. I had no idea what they were saying. It was telepathic, it was around a table, it was the same group of people. They looked like humans, but they weren't. They had no egos. And I learned they had no emotional bodies. They appeared slightly heartless, but they weren't. I didn't want to leave the last time. I remember hugging like a chair, going, I'm not going back. It was kind of good to have that experience, because they said it's okay, you'll be back soon. But I learned a lot about the emotional body, and about how it's kind of hijacked our experiences as humans. And having an emotional body, it's all about healing it. Once we heal that, we progress to the next level. So what I learned is that there's a beautiful planet I used to go to that had a kind of a small horizon. It was a stony planet, and I was moved to meditate there. When I meditated there with a singular mind, it was phenomenal, phenomenally ecstatic. And I kind of realized that every kind of dead end in my life, every decision I thought was the wrong decision, in fact was part of the illusion, because I was where I was. I was to be somehow, I guess in shamanic circles you call it soul retrieval. There are aspects of ourselves we leave back in traumatic situations. We literally fracture our spirit, our soul. So in this state where it's very unencumbered, in the astral state, you're very unencumbered, you're very, you have this mind that is singular. I realized life was not a test but a service to greater fulfillment as a being, as a multidimensional being. Every experience we have, even being in this prison scenario, and I mean really, as I think Kendall said yesterday, I mean it's a beautiful reality here. I mean the ocean, nature. What we deem as not being a beautiful reality is this strange kind of, the programs, the stances, all of this stuff, but the actual reality is absolutely beautiful. So I just realized that nothing was to do with adding on. We're taught at school, we're taught problems. 1 and 1 is a problem. Not 1 and 1 is 2. 1 and 1 is a maths problem. So the cart is put before the horse. We're taught that life is a problem. You've got to strive. You've got to suffer. A good person will sacrifice their life for the greater good. A good person will have health issues at a certain point of their life because they've done a job they didn't enjoy. They've done it to look after those around. They've done it for the greater good. Sure, they've sacrificed their dreams. That's a good person. This is absolute, of course, programming, and not particularly helpful to the soul. So once again, these states of the astral were very enticing, because this singular beautiful state. When I come back in the physical, I'd feel these bodies clapped around me, the fear of death, the fear of loss of loved ones, fear of loss of job, the fear, all these base chakra stuff, this fear of identity, you know. So to realize more and more, I kind of had this feeling of being kind of invisible. And these days, if we jump in the deep water, working as an energy healer, which I love, I can see as soon as clients come in, I can see behind their eyes almost the archetypal entities that they are channeling in their trauma. And it's fantastic after the healing, when all sorts of things kind of happen, that they can then start to go forward in a way that is honouring themselves without this kind of mesh around them. It's fascinating. This was interesting. This was a pivotal point. Going out of body, night after night, in the void, and there was a creature that looked pretty much like this, the most disgusting creature I've seen. And she kind of was a Medusa-ish kind of thing, you know, like the skin crawling, maggots, the stench in the astral. Can you imagine? It's like a dog on steroids, you smell. It wasn't good. And we'd be in the void and she'd be throwing energy balls at me. And someone said, that sounds like Buffy the Dragon Slayer. I said, I don't watch Buffy. I'm not interested in Buffy. But and she'd hit me. I remember the first time she hit me in the shoulder, I woke up and thought, whoa, I'm actually in pain. But, you know, what if you walk into a door frame in this life? You also get a bruise. Is this any worse? So anyway, night after night I was being taken out. This was personification of evil in my mind. And she kept on throwing these energy balls at me, whacking me. I learned to defend the energy balls. I could not make a direct hit on her, but I could defend myself quite well. Then after a few nights, this went on for about a week, and I thought, okay, this is pivotal. I'm either going mad, I need to get help, or I just keep going out, see what happens. I decided the latter. But it really was, you know, the sanity kind of, you know, being kind of pummeled here. Eventually she said, Greg, you're getting good at the whole defending thing, aren't you? I thought, okay, once again by name, defending? What do you mean by that? Next thing she's right by me, I thought I was going to astrally puke because it wasn't good. This feeling of dark, evil energy. And for some unknown reason, I felt this incredible release from my heart. It wasn't logical. I felt this release from my heart, and it was this incredible wave of empathy for the creature. I don't know why, it wasn't a choice. Then this happened. Her face changed and she was absolute radiance. And she said, you see, Greg, it's all the same. And I knew at that moment that alleged evil is the face of light seen through our own shadows, our own miscomprehension, our own misunderstanding. And a lot of the programming in this reality serves to bolster that misunderstanding and programming. So it didn't matter that people would not believe me about there not being evil. To me, I knew there's no evil. So I found that having had a few monsters and hairy monsters at the end of the bed and a few hissing animals and a lot of archetypes in the lower astral, think of like Grimm's fairy tales, so you literally come across those. I remember there was succubus often on top of me, like I wake up and there were these female kind of beings shrieking away. As soon as I said, I see you, they got the shock of their lives and were out of there. In fact, not long ago, I kind of slid into the astral, and above my wife in bed there was this a woman doing something to her energy field. As soon as she saw me see her, she just fled the scene, straight out the wall, gone. My wife woke up, I woke up, I said, what happened then? She said, I was having a nightmare. So it was just a normal run-of-the-mill nightmare, but this creature was having to do something with the energy field that was doing that. Is that a negative thing? I don't think nightmares are negative, personally. So, but it's interesting how when she saw me, so when these lower entities, or those lower threshold entities that are like gateway entities, once they recognize your signature, that you know you've gone through there a few times, they leave you alone. You think as children who have experiences, often as children, astral travel, have these lucid dreams or monsters in the room. Parents put a nightlight on and say, no, it's okay. Rather than talking them through it, I get a lot of parents come to me to talk to their kids and say, actually, this is what's happening. Don't turn the nightlight on, let it happen a bit and let's talk about it. So we deaden these senses within us as kids. Then we go to school and we're told there are problems. Though we'll be unearthed, this was fascinating. I'm in a tent, okay. I went surfing in Torquay, I love surfing. I knew something was going to happen. I felt this kind of weird vibe. Careful driving. I told my wife, should we go? Something weird's going to happen. Going to camp there. We lived in Melbourne, went to Torquay. First wave I'm on, there was a weird step in the wave. My knee went like that. I thought, not good. Go to the doctor, not good. On crutches, not good. You're going to need an op. It's not good. I'm lying in the tent that night and I was sort of toying a lot with the astral with this notion that we have this perfect template of health. I knew that we exist in perfection at all times. Somehow that's an illusion. Now I had this mantra. Remember, this is where I was at that stage in my life. My mantra was, as I was lying there, and often you can use a mantra to go into the astral. My mantra was, I deny the illusion of my injured knee and I give thanks to my perfect health. I deny the illusion of my injured knee, I give thanks to my perfect health. I kept saying it while I was awake the whole time. Nothing happened. I'd wake up in the night, very uncomfortable, nothing happened. After dawn, I'm awake, I go onto my stomach, then the astral vibrations come and I go, hang on, I'm awake. They're really loud. I hear the Lord's Prayer in my own voice being said, because I was brought up a Catholic as a kid, but didn't know it. Every time it got to thy will be done on earth as in heaven, it kept repeating these lines. My body was lifted off the air mattress in the physical, turned around, I'm freaking out because I'm awake. All these fingers working on I can feel them on my knee, I'm lowered down and I'm just screaming, also to prove that I was still awake, their consciousness. Anyway, after 10 days I was walking around the operation. Had I stuck with it, I reckon something, I mean, it was so bizarre for me that being levitation was incredible. Also that happened during the day, notion of a mantra, even if I didn't necessarily believe in that mantra, my own voice saying it, this one, something to it. Furygen is interesting. I'd be going out of the astral once, I felt this phenomenal fear, I thought, what's this? I've had a lot of things happening. I was shown all these black helicopters, UFOs, and I realized this fear around the earth wasn't my fear, I just moved through it. So a lot of the, one interesting situation in the astral, when I'd sort of lost any negative energies, I just published my book about astral travel and I was sort of thinking, how will people find it? I wasn't too sure. There was this entity behind me in the astral, two of them, and I felt slightly negative. I thought, okay. I was about to fly over this beautiful silver lake. I thought I'll confront these. As they came toward me, they started to pulverize me, and as they started to pulverize me, I started to disappear, and I felt incredibly blissful. I thought, this is interesting. Next time I had a lucid dream and there was anything negative going on, rather than steering the dream, I allow the drama to unfold, and I feel the bliss. If I'm going to crash a car, I allow myself to crash the car, I feel the bliss. So I learned not to control things. That is part of the karmic equation, that is part of the program. Very interesting. There is actually no drama. These are just a few techniques about astral stuff. So as I said, I teach it and stuff. But the unified field of sense is interesting. And when you're out of the body, you have a unified sense, not the separate senses. And you think in this reality, we also, this notion of being separate, you start to realize, of course, that you're connected with everything. So, because you can embody everything out there, it's quite amazing. So I started to learn, mantra is a very good way of doing it. Intention as well. Physical and mental relaxation are the main keys. So this is the kind of stuff I teach in my workshops. Fascinating, immediate manifestation can happen. I was once in the astral. I asked for healing for my wife's leg. She screamed. This light came out of her leg. Her leg opened up in a hole. And then for the next year, this calcified scar tissue was being taken out of a place where she had an accident. So it was kind of an immediate response in the physical when asked for in the astral, because it's the mind is very much singular. So here it's kind of like, yeah, that's one of the intentions to get at, is to get manifestation. Here's the emotional feeling argument. I found that emotions are dependent upon conditions. Like, you're a child. I'll give you an ice cream. If you are good, you're gone. And that's the human condition. That of course is the human reflection from this feeling of unconditional love which you feel in the astral, this feeling of absolute bliss, togetherness, of being loved. That is the overwhelming feeling. So to focus on that in the heart is very much a way. That is the driver of the astral condition. In the physical, happiness based on condition, you kind of know within you it can be taken from me, so it kind of, it's the seeds of suffering. Astral fire, it's often depicted as the astral fire because the lower astral dimensions are the threshold entities, and they're the things that you kind of got to get through. Things like Grimm's fairy tales, these were actually written to prepare us for that, not to scare us, to prepare us for what is there. All the archetypes are there, the witches, dragons, these things feeding off your energy. You know, I just swear at them, hit them, Jesus, whatever. Work your way through, eventually they leave you alone. And you have fantastic experiences. So, just like anything. The human emotional body is the roots of reincarnation. So, what is actually being served? There are beings being served by the karmic experience. There are beings recycling our unconscious experience of being human. This need to suffer, this craving to suffer in the human body. To let it go. So important. The dream, recognizing that you are in fact in a dream and kind of recognizing that you are the dream at the same time is a beautiful feedback. So here, the final thing here is just, in reality there is no true drama. Everything is a play of energy. For me now, I see this reality as beautiful reality, but it's a play of energy, and for selfish reasons, it's all about transcending this karmic being so that when you move on in whatever way you move on, you can be as conscious as you can, free of all this karmic entanglement. Okay? So, there we have it. I believe I'm probably should be being kicked off the stage now. Is that correct, Anthony? Because there was a 5-minute stage thing before, so I don't...
That's not the right term.
Oh, sorry. Ejected. But I feel like there's so much more to say about the experience. But jumping into the deep end, as I said, it's this feeling of delightful dumbness too. I've got to tell you an experience I had a few years ago, before I wrote my book. The reason I wrote my book on astral travel, I was meditating one day in Melbourne, where I used to live, tweak in the back of my left brain. I felt a pleasant little tweak. I came out of it. I said to my wife, something's happened. I could not put a sentence together. I was a very funny guy. I could not remember the names of people in my family. I could not remember discussion points with friends. I could not remember the names of my friends. So for a while, people were thinking, Greg, he's weird. I was still working as a muso at the time as well, doing a bit of Reiki, but not quite owning it, not talking about astral travel. So for a while, I couldn't put a sentence together. I wrote the book as a therapy to get from one end of a sentence to the other, and it just happened to come out about astral travel. I thought I'd get that out. But what also happened was this narration in the back of my mind was cut down. So it was a feeling of dumbness. Some person, once again, who I trusted, said, listen, that could be a trade-off. You've been getting out of body a lot. Maybe this trade-off of getting the narrator cut out is that you have to learn how to speak again. And I'd be calling oranges tomatoes. It was really weird. And like, when you can't remember names of people in your family, that's like, It was so bizarre. But I met somebody during my astral training, when I was training people in France, who had the same thing, and they called it, in French, they called it left brain freeze. So it's when an aspect of your brain is literally cut out of the equation. And I guess a lot of the astral experience is, and I guess working as a healer too, you are working from the heart. So I guess an aspect of that. So this kind of dumbness overtook me. So one of my favourite pastimes is just to sit there and do nothing. And just to do nothing. It's so nice to feel into the body and just do nothing. So, and also recognizing the mind is all through the body and vice versa, not separate. I think this is part of the heart connection. I'll stop jabbering. Thank you very much.